Sports professor Rick Horrow, welcome to Beyond the Scoreboard, the show that takes an inside look at the trillion-dollar business of sports, marketing, news, administration, deal-making, politics, business, law. Yeah, we just came off of an incredible Super Bowl. At the time of this taping, I'm still trying to thaw out. NBC trying to keep the synergy and the momentum going from the 150 million or so fans who watched on television and or streaming to the 20 million or so primetime fans who will tune in, hopefully breathlessly, even if they know the results from Pyeongchang and Korea. Korea taking on some added significance about the North Korean team. We'll get into that later. But let's talk about some Super Bowl recap before we do. We have some special guest, Jamie Roots, who ran the Super Bowl basically for the Texans a year ago and talks about Houston. We'll get into the one-year anniversary, what he thinks of Super Bowls a year out, which is especially timely, especially for people in Atlanta who are looking at this week's Minneapolis Super Bowl as a template and a test for what's going to happen in Atlanta as well. Tune in on Audio Boom and Stitcher and all of our places. And if you want to see our 15 to watch, plus our 55 tech and our 5 philanthropic list of this week, NBCWashington.com and the NBC family of digital networks. Let's take a look at some of the NFL issues before we take on the Jamie Roots interview. He had a lot to say. But if you spent millions on a 30 or 60-second Super Bowl ad, now what? Super Bowl 52, clear winners in my opinion. The Eagles, U.S. Bank Stadium, long underwear purveyors, and the color purple. Losers, Patriots, hoodie, holograms, weathermen. Weathermen did their job. They just gave us some bad results, but everybody knew it. How about some of the ads? Well, the verdict is still in. The Dodge Ram Super Bowl ad using a Martin Luther King iconic message to sell trucks. That may have backfired, but we'll have to see a week later. Depends also what your perspective is. Do you want to sell long-term, an uptick in detergent sales like Tide, travel book to Australia, Crocodile Dundee, contributions to a cause, Hyundai's Hope on Wheels, funnels revenue to fight pediatric cancer. By the way, next week we'll do a more thorough check back and measure key performance indicators against what the overall perspective ought to be. The NFL season officially over. The league left pondering its future following its tumultuous season. The NFL has gone from one of the most unifying institutions in America to the country's most polarizing sports brand. Player protests spanned the course of the season, drawing most of the attention. Ratings continued to drop. Tickets and jerseys were burned. The ratings is a function of measurement. More people may be watching on digital, which may be better for everybody. President Trump openly condemned players who protested the national anthem, only adding more fuel to the fire and maybe galvanizing in the other direction. And heading into the offseason, the NFL will be looking to make more significant changes to ensure a repeat doesn't happen next year. But the bottom line, they have learned from it and learned well. Cities, by the way, look at the Super Bowl, and what about the cost of building stadiums? In Minneapolis, taxpayers contributed $500 million, about nearly 50% of the cost. However, the economic activity still is mixed. It put Minneapolis on the map to a lot of European and other destinations. 230,000 hotel night stays during Super Bowl week, a net figure. We don't know if people would have come anyway, and this is just replacement, but we also are waiting for the numbers. Atlanta, spanking new Mercedes-Benz Stadium 2019. One number the host committee can all but guarantee. The temperature will at least be in double digits, which is more than it's been here. My overall take is Minneapolis and the region definitely under-promised and over-delivered. The weather was a given coming in. It snowed on Saturday. Mall of America was far away from the stadium, which was far away from the convention center. But everybody took it in stride, and in many cases, even took it on as a challenge. Overall, the grade, if I'm giving a grade, an A. But don't look for the Super Bowl to return here anytime soon. Maybe one more time during the bonding period. We'll have to see. Speaking of stadiums, though, as we know, that's the key. Vegas, the Raiders opened their long-awaited 7,500-square-foot stadium preview center, featuring Super Bowl rings, Raiders memorabilia, 2 large video walls, team highlights on each side. The center filled with Raiders memorabilia with all of those doodads and gadgets, but the from-your-seat large-scale stadium model isn't ready for public viewing yet, but probably by March. Current Raider season ticket holders get first choice of seats in the new venue. And while the Raiders are celebrating this incremental milestone toward their new Vegas home, not all in Sin City are happy at present. According to multiple reports, the Eagles' surprise upset of the Patriots, a bad night for sports books, including William Hill. The company reports multi-million-dollar losses at 108 Nevada outlets. Super Bowl and philanthropy. It's in the history books. Eagles fans are not disappointed, and Patriot fans are, and they're all heading home. But the Vikings will celebrate Black History Month through a partnership with EverFi. Together, the NFL franchise and the online education leader provides Twin Cities High students with 306 African American history and online history curriculum, celebrating the stories of figures who changed the fabric of American history. And by the end of the 17-18 school year, the Vikings will reach 10 schools with this curriculum. On February 23rd, representatives from the Vikings will visit the Harvest School of Network of Schools Best Academy and African American Heritage School. The program will include performances celebrating African American contributions to the arts and a panel discussion on themes drawn from the online course. And the partnership is a fitting tribute to Black History Month and a great answer to the question, what's next for the Vikings? It's philanthropy and more philanthropy. Kevin Warren, as we've heard before, is the architect of that effort, along with the Will family. And by the way, speaking of more philanthropy, Super Bowl ads touting it more than ever before. Tim Calkins, a marketing professor at Northwestern University, says our country's all sorts of issues right now, and it's very polarizing. And this may be brands responding to that by embracing causes that everybody can rally around. Only 6.4% of Super Bowl ads in the past 10 years made a corporate social responsibility appeal, according to research from Charles Taylor, a marketing professor at Villanova. Now, the bigger issue in the Super Bowl is philanthropy. 30 seconds of airtime can run $5 million. But certainly, if an authentic ad and deeply rooted connection to the cause of a specific organization, it is a great storytelling moment if handled correctly. We'll see over the next week what the resonance is and whether the handling correctly part is definitely met. Certainly, one of the things that's handled correctly is J.J. Watt's effort to raise nearly $37 million for Hurricane Harvey. Result, NFL Man of the Year, and all of the excitement generated by it. He says the award's about the inherent good that lies within humanity and the city of Houston. I would say it's all about him working with the Texans. And Jamie Roots, the guy that basically ran the Super Bowl and also runs the philanthropic efforts as well. He's now part of the Greater Houston Partnership, which is the city organization that worked hand in hand with the Texans and J.J. Watt to do all of this. And the bottom line to all of this, again, is Super Bowl is much more than economic impact and also much more than philanthropy, facility development, and the like. Jamie Roots and the Texans organization a year ago can put it in perspective. Connected?
Yes.
Good. That's normal Facebook. See, normally Facebook, it's the technological age, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the sports professor, Rick Horrow, and this is another Facebook installment. We are live at the Brown Convention Center, Super Bowl 51 in Houston, Texas, with some of the more important people who are really the architects, pioneers of what will be successful Super Bowl 51 in Houston. But before I start, I just want to tell you, you know what these are? These are Super Bowl tickets. We'll get into that in a few minutes, and here's the thing you need to remember. I have them, and you don't. And let me tell you what else. Face value, easy check, not secondary market. This is not the NFL deal that they cut. This is not StubHub. Anybody want to take a guess what the face value says? $3,200. $100. We're going to talk today about what that does for a community, what that does for fans, what that does for corporate people. And a good friend for a long time, one of the people who's really on board in developing this from his original role, Greater Houston Partnership, where he chaired the Houston Texans president, and an all-around good guy, Jamie Roots. How's that for intro?
That's great. That really good to be with you. It's really a pleasure to have you in town.
Yeah, really. Okay, now sometimes he's gratuitous and sometimes he's serious. We're just going to have to figure out which one it is. So first of all, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations for what you don't think I'm telling you about, which is Clemson winning the National Football.
Oh, that was pretty special. So it's been a good month for me so far.
Well, it's been a good month for you, and notwithstanding the Texans are not here on the field, they were in the playoffs.
Right.
And so let me just talk for a second about what the club's role is in putting a successful rollout like this on the field. What are the Texans doing?
Well, the entirety of our organization has been involved ever since we got the Super Bowl about 3 years ago, but I'll back up just a little bit before that. Yeah. The league invites cities to participate in the bidding process, and we were asked to participate for Super Bowl 50 and Super Bowl 51. We weren't able to participate in 50 because we had the NCAA Final Four, but we could for 51, and we prevailed over Miami, right, who was the competition. And I'll tell you, one of the key things that matters in the bid, certainly you got the city, right? You have the stadium, you have the transportation and infrastructure, all the pieces of that, but it is about the owner as well. Yeah. Bob McNair is one of the most respected owners in the National Football League, serves as the chair of the Finance Committee, and so their respect for him was part of that decision. After that point, I've served as the deputy chairman of the Super Bowl host committee, and our staff has been integrally involved in helping to make it happen, working with the host committee, being the bridge with the National Football League, and it's really made for a pretty spectacular Super Bowl production so far.
Common misconception that we will clear up yet again as an extension of our Facebook that we did in L.A. at the NHL All-Star Game, where we asked the same question to AEG about what's in it for the Kings. Yeah. Basically, what's in it for the Texans? You don't make money off it, but there are certainly significant attaboy community benefits.
Well, it's a lot of work, right? Yeah. And so you wouldn't do it unless there was some kind of purpose within your organization that you were fulfilling. We talk about three things: win championships, create memorable experiences, and do great things for Houston. And the Super Bowl brings $350 million in economic impact, 140,000 out-of-town visitors, and they're not just the run-of-the-mill type visitor to the community. Yeah. These are the opinion leaders of the world. It served as the ultimate deadline for us to complete projects that we needed to for a long time to make sure that Houston would shine like never before, and 3.5 billion media impressions. If we don't step up, bid for the Super Bowl, and then work with the host committee to make it great, Houston doesn't realize those benefits. So a strong Houston is great for the Houston Texans.
Let's talk about the economic impact, because there are a number of cynics, and I was working in that space for a while, but everybody jousts for that last paragraph in the Wall Street Journal that talks about economic impact, and they talk about how it doesn't exist because money is fungible. If you spend it on movies, you spend it here. 140,000 people are in town that would not be in town but for this game.
That's right. And it's all, I mean, this is incremental impact. I mean, all of the displaced elements are factored in. So I don't know. I mean, you can argue what the exact number is. It's a big number. But the more important thing is the opportunity for us to get our community together like it's never been before, right? Create, I mean, you look at Discovery Green, the Hilton Americas, Marriott Marquis, the George R. Brown Convention Center, $3 million of investment out at NRG Park to improve the environs. Last 2 years, $40 million of investment in NRG Stadium, our airports, I could go on, Midtown, et cetera. But all of those improvements are going to pay dividends for Houston for a generation. Right. That's priceless.
And the other priceless part that I know academics find very difficult to quantify, and you mentioned the 3.5 billion impressions, if you had to, as a PR agency, quantify how much you would spend to get those 3.5 billion impressions, how much money would you?
Well, the only thing I know for sure is it wouldn't show up in my calculator, right? There'd be that many zeros. Right. But it's particularly important for Houston because 4 years ago, I mean, I was, as part of the partnership, created a branding campaign, a positioning campaign for Houston, the city with no limits. Houston's the most diverse city in America, diverse in terms of the people, the culture, the arts and entertainment, et cetera. Houston is a fun and affordable city, and all of these fun things are available to everyone. If you want to do it, you can find it in Houston. Number 3, Houston has this can-do spirit. Yeah. If you can dream it, you can do it in Houston. So these last 4 years, as part of this Super Bowl run-up, we have been putting in place everything that would demonstrate that brand. And so I would see, really, Super Bowl is a crescendo of that repositioning. Houston is the next great global city, and Super Bowl 51 weekend will be remembered as the point in time when we took our seat at the table of great global cities.
And by the way, just a little editorialization here. We've known Jamie for a long time from his history with the Columbus Crew and otherwise. And if you, and NBA in Indiana, etc., if you would have heard him say crescendo of repositioning years ago, it would be like, what does that mean? But he's intense, he's passionate, and he's really into this. And you're proud of this, aren't you?
We are. All of us are very proud of our city. And I haven't even mentioned what's the secret sauce of Houston. Yeah. It's the people. Yeah. You know, the word Texas in Spanish is Tejas. It comes from an Indian word meaning friendship. So from the founding of Texas, the founding of Houston, building friendships is what we're all about. And I know people coming in from across the globe, they're experiencing that one by one in the interactions that they have with people. Our hope is people go back and tell their friends about what a great community this is. I hope the images that are beamed out from Houston, like this one, is showing this the beauty of this city. We are the next great global city, and we're taking our place.
Why is there, controversy? Because people want controversy, but I know there's an annual discussion about sales tax forgiveness and what it means and why do you do it. Well, part of the answer, obviously, is you wouldn't be here but for.
Sure.
But there is a negotiated NFL bid process, right, and you participate in that.
Yeah, that's right. And it is the most competitive beauty pageant among cities that there is. Right. The biggest annual sporting event on the planet. Everyone wants it. And the league knows that. So you have to either step up and provide the support and infrastructure and accommodations that are required, or you don't get the game. And for us, again, for Houston, for any city, it's great. But for Houston, this is our chance to reshape perceptions. The perceptions of Houston that have existed are from 1980, 1985. You remember the urban cowboy, right? John Travolta. People think Houston is still like that. We're not like that. We have a diverse economy. We're the most diverse city in America. We have world-class amenities. We're the culinary capital of the South. And so there's a Smash Mouth song. You remember the band Smash Mouth, right?
Yeah, I'm not that old.
Well, All Stars, the name of the song. And there's a line in there that says, only shooting stars break the mold. In order to reshape perception, we had to have a seminal event like Super Bowl. And I want to take Rick Campo, who you'll talk to in a few minutes, has done the best job of leading this type of effort that has ever been done. And we could not have had that repositioning without his leadership.
Before we talk to Rick and before we finalize some of the issues about where the Greater Houston Partnership is and host committee, sing that line.
Which one? Oh,
say it.
Only shooting stars break the mold. I'm not a singer.
Yeah,
I am an administrator.
Clearly, you're not a singer. That was great. We're going to rack that up, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to see that 4 million times. That was pretty good. Final question about very good. Final question about the balance sheet. The Texans, do you do a kind of an incremental analysis of the amount of extra staff work it's going to take and how you deal with your suite holders who are a little upset because they don't get their normal? I mean, there are a lot of things that are on the table that you trade off for community benefits, and you're not whining. I'm just asking you the question.
No, we don't run those numbers, because at the end of the day, there's a guy by the name of Viktor Frankl, who wrote a book, Man's Search for Meaning. Okay, he was a concentration camp survivor, and he talked about, it was really a book about the power of purpose. He said the man that has a what to live for can endure almost any how. So that notion of win championships, create memorable experiences, and do great things for Houston. As an organization, we don't add all that stuff up. Yeah. That's what we're going after. Super Bowl was a chance to do something very special for Houston. Nobody but us could do it. And so whatever the price is, doesn't matter anymore. It's because this is who we are. We want to make Houston great.
Houston Partnership issues, you've been involved in that, will continue to be involved in that.
Right.
Is this an institutionalized group of civic leaders who started with the Final Four here, Super Bowl, other sporting activities, but also see how it fits in the overall urban fabric of the community?
Well, I will tell you that the Greater Houston Partnership has had a role in all of those things. Tony Chase, who is a board member with me at the Greater Houston Partnership, a former chair, was the chairman of our local organizing committee for the Final Four. And I can't say that all of this was intentional. We knew the Super Bowl was out there. We knew we wanted to have this repositioning of Houston, so it was an intentional effort. The great thing about Houston is there's no I, me, mine, yours. We're all in it for Houston. We leverage the power of teamwork. This weekend, we will present the Super Bowl trophy, and you know whose name is on that, right?
Yeah.
Vince Lombardi. Vince Lombardi said, individual commitment to a collective purpose. That's what makes a team work. That's what makes an organization work. That's what makes society work. And that's what makes civilization work. Let me tell you, that's what makes Houston work. We all saw this as this incredible opportunity, and everybody aligned against NCAA Final Four. Then we hosted Copa America. We hosted the Advocare Texas kickoff with the University of Houston in Oklahoma. Sold out. Was the biggest game on the biggest opening college football weekend in history. And then we ended with the Advocare V100 Texas Bowl with Texas A&M and Kansas State, another marquee crowd. So all year long, we've had these opportunities to show off Houston, but none more important than the Super Bowl.
When are you running, and how can I move to Houston?
I haven't run in a week. I'm going to try to run tomorrow morning. I know that's not what you were talking about.
And nor is it going to answer
But
that
that's
question.
the only kind of running that I'm going to be doing.
Doing it, definitely. So final issue, too. So here is a guy who was born in Stone Mountain, Georgia.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So Falcon fan? No, I'm a Houston guy. Yes, Falcon fan?
Growing up,
So,
here's a cool thing, right? So the Falcons get into the Super Bowl. All of these memories come flying back to me. My first ever National Football League game with my father, the Atlanta Falcons against the Houston Oilers, Earl Campbell at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. That's what makes this game so special. I mentioned we're the most diverse city in America, and nothing brings us together like the game of football.
And now for future NFL and Super Bowls, you get to go, we get to go, everybody gets to go to Minnesota, then Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta, which is going to be beautiful.
Absolutely.
And then the whole LA situation where, if the Raiders don't work, it'll be 9 teams there.
Yeah.
Well,
and I hope for each of those trips, there are 53 gentlemen in deep steel blue, Liberty white, and battle red of the Houston Texans coming with me.
Well, there is Jamie Roots. So Jamie Roots is he's a soccer aficionado, national champion soccer player, Clemson.
Twice.
Twice.
Well, just have to clarify. I want to get the record right.
National champion, it is. National champion, Clemson twice. Indiana MBA, Atlanta guy. But he also sings, he administers. I don't know what you don't do.
I run.
You run.
Good to be with you.
Thanks very much. That was awesome. Next victim is probably the guy who, not probably, works hand in hand with you, Jamie.
Absolutely.
Really.
Let me tell you, Rick is one of the great leaders of our community. And one of the great parts of the Super Bowl experience is Discovery Green and Super Bowl Live. Rick not only had the key role in Super Bowl Live, but all of these great buildings that have made it so special. So he's a good friend.
We will continue with this Love Fest right now, Act 2.
Brother.
And it should be.
You got all my lines.
Hey, man, I will see you tomorrow. I'll see you Sunday. Yes, sir. Thank you, my friend. The beauty of Facebook Live is that we can be informal and describe what this is really about.
I don't know what to say. He took all my lines.
No, we're going to do it from your perspective, too, because he is Jamie Roots is a sports marketing and management guy from Clemson, but Rick Campo, by the way, the CEO of Camden Properties Trust for 14 years, and unless I
it's more like 30. But
what's the 14? Oh, that's probably with the name change, but you've been in the real estate business for 30 years.
Absolutely.
Even more.
Well, 40 actually, but
40. And by the way, just as we continue this, we're in case you wanted to know why we were kind of kicked out of other places, we did this on purpose. This is the ballroom where Commissioner Goodell held his press conference on Wednesday. We're panning, and this is where a lot of the NFL stuff, you may not care about Roger Goodell, but you care about Lady Gaga, and she was here a few minutes ago. I wanted to see if I was on the floor, see if I could pick up anything that she might have dropped, but that didn't work. Didn't work here. No. So Rick, give us some perspective. You have been a successful business businessman, real estate developer, maven in this community for a number of years, Greater Houston Partnership. Why did you spend so much time running this organization?
Well, because I think, as Jamie said, it's just one of the most incredible events on earth, right? It's the biggest sporting event on the planet, and it gives us the opportunity to create this platform to do a number of things. Jamie talked about the economic development aspect of it, so I won't go there, but here's where I'll go. So one of the most important things for me with the Super Bowl and this platform is bringing the community together. When you think about sports, and the reason I think people love sports so much is that you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's that spontaneity, it's that energy that is created with sports, right? Whether your team wins or loses, you're either elated or, oh my God, my team lost, right? But what it really does is it brings the community together. And, in this divided country today, we need things that bring the community together. So right outside these curtains here, we have what's called Super Bowl Live. Super Bowl Live is a fan fest, a family fan fest, free to the public. And the Super Bowl host committee put that on in conjunction with the NFL. We co-produced the event together. And as of last night, we had over 500,000 people that came down to Super Bowl Live. Now, when you think about 500,000 people of just different, different walks of lives, from CEOs to Uber drivers, and they talk about the Super Bowl, and they're all together having a great time. So to me, it's the bringing the community together that is really the most important part, and then the economic stuff is important as well. But to me, that's the really cool part. Jamie talked about memorable experiences, what the Texans are about, and that's what I'm about too. I want to create memorable experiences and peak experiences for people, because in life, what do we have besides hanging out and having fun, right? We're going to work, play, and live, right? So have fun.
How do you quantify that in a business environment other than being, I'm a very successful businessman, and here's my anecdotal evidence. When you talk to mayors about public-private partnerships, it's the easiest to understand and the hardest to quantify: quality of life, industry relocation, and the like. How do you put a box around it and explain it to people?
Well, you can explain it financially, like business people do. And when you go outside and you see the George R. Brown, and you see the art pieces that are in the George R. Brown, you see the Marriott Marquis Hotel, you see the Partnership Tower, all that is about $500 million of investment that we did. Jamie was a part of that. I was the chairman of the entity that financed that and did all that. And that's all private-public partnerships. And we created a return on investment model and showed the politicians that it made sense and it made money. And then what it did is it created an opportunity for quality of life. When we walk by, for example, a piece of art that cost $1 million, right? Yeah. The public doesn't look at it and go, that cost $1 million. I wonder why they spent money like that. What they do is they walk by that piece of art and they go, wow, that's incredible. And then they take a selfie and then they send it off to their friends and family and say, look, I'm here having fun, you ought to come. Yeah. And so to me, so what you're able to do is everything has to be viable financially. If you don't have money, there is no mission. I mean, so everything has to be funded. It has to be funded in a rational, reasonable way. And then what happens is the value proposition becomes people have fun, people are enjoying it, and they don't know why. And it's because someone thought about it, somebody worked on it, somebody figured out how to finance it, somebody figured out why it made sense to do it, got everybody involved in the community to agree with it. Maybe not all. No. I mean, we do have our recalcitrant folks, but what happens then at the end of the day is you create this environment that's called quality of life. And when you think about cities, we compete for intellectual capital, people, bodies, people who fill jobs, doctors to help people, heal. We compete with every other city in the world for that talent. And if we don't have a quality of life and making investments in a quality of life, we can't compete for that talent. So that's why it's really important to do.
Really important, and a great segue into the financial rationality of all this, because a lot of people take apples, papayas, grapefruits, and they don't do the appropriate comparison. Host committee, independent budget, raises its own money. How long have you been doing it? What's the structure look like? Just give us some of the financial.
Sure, I'll give you. The host committee is like a startup business, and almost like a political campaign, right? Yeah. So what happens is you start out with no money, and we actually started out we had $18,000 in the bank when we started the bid process, and the bid cost $500,000. to complete. We had a lot of volunteers to do it, so we were basically negative $500,000 when we started in May of 2013. We got the bid. Then we built a business plan around what we needed to fund, how we were going to fund it. We started recruiting people to help us do that. We started financing. One of the big things to start with was fundraising. Yeah. So we had 19 local companies that put in big bucks to fund this, and we did that in 2014 when the price of oil was real high. So important to get your money first. With no money, there is no mission. Right. And so the host committee has a budget of, our official budget right now is $64 million. Okay. And we raised that from private funds and people who believe fundamentally that their investment in the community is important. And that's so we have now a big budget. We have 40 full-time employees, about half a dozen contractors, or maybe actually 24 contractors.
So it's 3.5 years since the bid.
Right.
Institutionalized after the bid? Does
Absolutely.
It go away? Does it sunset?
It does. What happens is we spend our money. The event is culminated obviously on Sunday. It's not over Sunday because we need to make sure everybody has a great time leaving. And you get in fine, you got to leave fine, right? Have a good time in the middle. And so once that happens, then we have to add it all up and pay the bills. And once we do that, it probably takes a month or two, and then our staff goes on to other activities. But there's only been a few people in the world who have ever run Super Bowls, so our staff are very, very, very marketable for other jobs, and we're going to help them get jobs. And this is one of those kind of peak experiences. I got to work on the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Right? And you have a great volunteer staff. Margaret Williams, thank you for being our executive producer. It's a Visit Houston. Don't know who's going to do some of the stuff we're doing, and she kind of rushed to the aid.
Awesome.
And that's like everybody else here that works with you. There's a spirit here.
There is a spirit here, and when we were doing one of our NFL production meetings, NFL people and contractors that have been working on it for 25 years, they encapsulated the Houston spirit in 3 words, and that is, we got this. And you know what? We got this. This is going to be the greatest Super Bowl ever, and we're from Houston, and we love it.
So, legacy. Tell me, kind of finally, you wake up Monday morning, got everybody out of here, so it's Tuesday morning.
Okay.
And you look back and you say, I am so proud of what we did here because
over 1 million people came to Super Bowl Live, and people got along. They had a great time, and then our legacy projects that we've completed are lasting a long time. The Marriott Marquis, for example, 1,000-room hotel. We're going to be able to build a convention business that's bigger than it was before. With all this new improvements, they stay after the Super Bowl, and it creates jobs long term for the community, and the promotional aspects are just going to be huge. So that's what I'll say for sure.
Well, and it's in good hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Friend. It almost doesn't really matter. If I ask you for a prediction, are you too political? Or are you going?
Oh no, absolutely. Atlanta, 27-21.
Wow. All right. So everybody, his football knowledge may not be great, but his development real estate knowledge is pretty good. His organizational knowledge is great. He is a great Pied Piper for the community, and the community is lucky to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I own properties in Atlanta, but not in Boston.
I was just going to say that's probably just going to ask you about that.
And I have a lot of friends more friends from Atlanta here than Boston.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So if are you out of here? Or are you going to stick around?
I'm out of here. I'm going to be around.
Okay. I want to catch you, and we'll spend some time together. So
okay. Good.
Thank
Absolutely.
you very much.
Thanks.
Give me the mic. We got to get Larry Fine on.
All right. Get him on.
And
thank you. Take care.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate that.
Bye bye.
So every community has a public-private partnership where they work directly with the team as well as the host committee. Probably none better than we've seen in Houston. And what they'll do is do best practices that will then be passed on from community to community, what they've learned before and what they learn after. And I've asked Larry Fine, who is the North American Executive Global Poobah Editor for Reuters. How does that sound?
Not even close. That sounds pretty good, especially if there's a pay raise that comes in there.
It sounds great, but that's not what you are. What's the title?
Well, I'm the northeastern U.S. correspondent. I'm based in New York, and so I handle the big sports stories.
You handle the big sports stories, but you have been to the last 7 Super Bowls?
I've been to about 7 Super Bowls, about 20 World Series, about 25 U.S. Open tennises, all the golf majors.
And we see each other from time to time. The reason why I want to do this is to get your perspective, your comparative perspective. So, Super Bowl 50 in Santa Clara, San Francisco was a special one for historical reasons. We go to Minnesota next, and Miami, and Atlanta eventually, and LA. So we're kind of right in the middle of an interesting cycle. So give me some of your general perspectives and perceptions of this week. What are some of the biggest issues?
Well, here we're right in the middle of downtown. Everything is kind of coordinated. It's been made easy, as far as that goes. The hospitality has been super gracious, feeding us and giving us stuff to drink. Very, very.
That's, by the way, you do notice that's the first thing a media guy talks about.
It's very big to the media. Yeah, it's a very big concern. We're on a per diem, Rick. You know what I mean? And so we like to get these free meals when we can.
Yes.
But anyway, so the hospitality has been really good, and everything's been convenient, and so it's worked smoothly so far.
Business side, security side. This is after a whole lot of international turbulence, to be sure, and some terrorist issues. Do we feel safe?
Yep, very safe, very secure, smooth. No complaints there. It's been very good.
Fence around a downtown area bigger than I've seen. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, well, that's a little bit bizarre. That's a little odd. They've, in order to centralize everything the way they've done, and they've succeeded in it, they've basically cut out about, I don't know how many square blocks there are. I mean, 3 or 4 square blocks of downtown, which are big blocks, and they've devoted it to these various fan fest things, and bandstand and concessions and all sorts of like a carnival going on in the middle of downtown. So it makes getting around a little bit tricky, a little hard. Yeah. But I think that they've drawn a lot of people to it, as I heard Rick say. So I guess that's been good.
Is this, in your mind, and we'll talk to Peter O'Reilly eventually, who runs the Super Bowl for the NFL. Is this an over-the-top glorified TV show? Is this a B2B corporate experience? Or is this kind of a once-in-a-lifetime bucket list thing for fans?
Well, I mean, there's no denying the hoopla and the crowds that are drawn into a Super Bowl. I mean, it is a big deal event. There's no question. But I do feel that the NFL, has been sort of packaging things more with an eye towards viewership and TV and exposure that way. And I think they've been giving some of the events a little bit of short shrift in order to package them and put them all together in a tight space. The honors situation on Saturday is shared with the Hall of Famers. So I mean, you have the Hall of Famers just brought out on stage, and they're available to us to interview at the same time as the offensive rookie of the year and the defensive rookie of the year are being trotted in front of us, and it's a bit of a 3-ring circus instead of giving each its due. And then the same thing with the media day used to be earlier in the day. So that we could work on stories from all that material that we get, which is a wonderful opportunity we get. But now it's been packaged into Super Bowl opening night, and it's a big special.
And Roger Goodell moved his press conference this year to Wednesday. Is there any conspiracy about doing it in front of less media than if it would have been Friday?
That's a good point. That's a good point. Well, there may be, but it's a funny thing about that one is that they so carefully vet the State of the League address that Mr. Goodell, Commissioner Goodell, does, that it's not available to the media for, 5 hours afterwards, because they're just very careful. And so, it is what it is. It's a very, they try to avoid any kind of controversy. They try not to.
It is what it is, ladies and gentlemen. A senior writer's assessment, and that's not the most eloquent thing you'll ever hear, but that's Larry's perspective on it. So, the kind of the bottom line of all this. What generally you've been writing about this week?
Well, another one of the questions that the commissioner artfully dodged, the deflate gate and the personal kind of revenge motif with Tom Brady has been one of the issues. Tom Brady actually has been many-faceted because he's going through personal situations, the health of his mother apparently, and so it's been an emotional week for him, and that's not usually the case for the button-down Patriots, And then you've got the upstart Falcons flying high this season, and Matt Ryan having an MVP year, and they could be a serious team going forward. So, from the competitive side, it looks like it's going to be a very strong Super Bowl.
Prediction?
I kind of like the Patriots in a tight game only because it just means a lot to them. Even though they've been to so many, this is the 7th together for Belichick and Brady. They're far from jaded, though. They take each one of these as an absolutely fresh experience, and they want to win.
Score?
Ooh, it should be fairly high scoring. I would say something like about a 27-23. Or could even be add 5 points to that. It could be into the low 30s.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're silly enough to adjust your over and under based on Larry Fine, he said 50 points, or maybe 55, or maybe somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, that's about it. Rick. That's about where I put it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, first of all, as we all understand, thank you, Larry, for all this. Nobody really cares what a sports writer predicts. Nobody really cares what a generalist predicts. But I appreciate your time, and I'm gonna give you my 2 50-yard Super Bowl tickets. How's that? No, not even close.
On behalf of the Academy, no. Well, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Well, what's Las Vegas saying, actually?
3.5. So, and we'll see. I mean, it could be a close game. No, nobody knows. But the beauty of this is, as Larry said, this is the ultimate reality television show, and we'll see where it goes.
And they have an awful lot of it on the TV on Sunday, right? That's another, what is it, a 4.5 hour?
And when one of the issues we'll talk about maybe next year is when you're at the game, you get an experience that is a bucket list experience, but you don't get to watch the commercials, and that's because of the advertising pre-commitments at NRG Stadium relative to the league, relative to the team. And so, ladies and gentlemen, from my perspective, I've been to 22 straight. I'm not sure that's a good thing or not, and I've not seen one commercial, not one commercial. I'm going to have to rely on your stuff on the commercials.
All right.
Thank you, my friend.
Okay, Rick.
Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Cool. Give me my microphone back.
All right.
I know I get it.
Oh, I can get it off for you.
Okay. So let's take. Do we have enough time? Good. Okay. Again, Vargo Williams, our executive producer. Thank you, Larry. Thank you. Appreciate that. We're just going to walk for a minute. And we're going to show you a view that you really don't see normally, which is the Media Center. There we go. No problem. Media Center, Radio Row. So this is the Brown Convention Center. The ballroom that Vargo has panned to before is the location where Roger Goodell has his press conference. And just to give you some perspective, that is, well, let's walk out over here so we can see the media center, where, as I remember it was 7,000 media credentials that are given out on a regular basis. The Radio Row and Television Row starts the Super Bowl Monday. It's winding down now this afternoon. Just want to go out here to walk and kind of show you the hall. It gets bigger with media from all over the world, dignitaries, owners. You saw Jamie Roots come in. And that's the perspective. So if you pan over, Radio Row, Media Row is over there as well. And corporations will activate around this. You'll have superstars from time to time coming in. We have a Pied Piper group of people who are walking here. This looks like somebody you can always tell where there is a celebrity that comes through from time to time. They all follow people.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know who that is. And you could always, by the way, you could always tell here at Super Bowl by the number of red-jacketed security people who are flanking people from time to time. So, that's enough of that experience in this world. Let me just give you some kind of closing perspectives. The Super Bowl has always been a special event. Super Bowl I was televised by 2 networks simultaneously, and the ad costs were $42,000 for a 30-second spot. This year, ads completely sold out well in advance, over 5 million. We're going to have over 150 million people watch, but we don't know how they're going to watch, because they're going to watch on televisions, they're going to going to watch on mobile devices, and they're going to watch on iPads, etc., and they're going to be streaming. And one of the things we're going to find long term is this will embark on or begin a trend for a new measurement on how Super Bowls get viewed and watched and how other sporting events do. We've had it on our podcast, Keeping Score, and we're going to talk about that a little more. For the city of Houston, you've heard Rick Campo and Jamie Roots, $500 million, 3.5 billion impressions, 20,000 hotel rooms. You can't buy that publicity. For the NFL, on to Minnesota, on to Atlanta, on to Miami, and on to Los Angeles. And the Super Bowl is a very important component of stadium financing and public-private partnerships. Why? Because of 140,000 people are coming into town that otherwise might not, and only 65,000 can come to the stadium. We all understand there is economic impact that nobody can question. So it is a win-win-win situation for everybody. And let me finally conclude by saying this is so prolific that Heinz has launched a campaign to make the Super Bowl an annual holiday, Super Bowl Monday, because they've quantified that 16 million people will call in sick the day after the game. I personally think that's low. Everybody in the sound of my voice needs to hear this. Call in sick on Monday for your employers because you're not going to be productive anyway because you're going to be watching a fantastic Super Bowl. Well, that's Jamie Roots' incredible perspective on what the Texans do philanthropically and what the Super Bowl can do for a city. Let's move on. Let's move from Minnesota to Korea. And believe it or not, there's no discussion about athlete venues and whether they'll be ready. There was in Sochi, there was in Rio, but the athlete villages are opening, 7,000 residents, the main one at Pyeongchang, a second one as well, 8 15-story buildings, a total of 600 units, and the villages have avoided any heavy criticism of like facilities in Sochi and Rio. And by the way, all the flags waving brightly, including the North Korean flag, which is also really, really incredibly important for all of these efforts from a peacemaking perspective. Also, the delegation of athletes are in South Korea from North Korea, committing and affirming their role in the upcoming Olympics. The 32-member North Korean delegation arrived at the international airport with South Korean skiers holding out joint training at the North Korean ski resort. Media coverage of the North Korean athletes has been hectic leading up to the opening ceremony. The global press has been clamoring to speak to the North Korean athletes and their coaches, each trying to be the first to report on their presence in South Korea. 22 North Korean athletes will be staying at the village facilities throughout the games. The two Koreans will march together under a unification banner at the opening ceremony, the first time they've done so since the 2007 Asian Winter Games. The unification hopefully gets more symbolic beyond this symbolism and would represent a genuine step in the unification as well as the positives that we really haven't seen since Chinese ping pong diplomacy years ago. Well, that's the good news, but the bad news involves Larry Nassar, sentenced to decades in prison, investigation still looming. The Wall Street Journal says the U.S. Olympic Committee reportedly has had about a number of reports of knowledge of his sexual abuse in 2015, yet decided not to act. And 3 years ago, the president and CEO of USA Gymnastics, Steve Penny, told top USOC executives that an internal investigation of Nassar had uncovered possible criminal behavior. Scott Blackman defends himself, saying he had encouraged Penny to turn the matter over to law enforcement. And one positive outcome so far: USA Gymnastics will now reportedly require all gymnasts to be chaperoned by someone other than their coaches at upcoming events. Well, that's not nearly enough, but it's certainly something that you can build on as far as the Olympic efforts. Finally, we're only a few days away from the opening ceremony, and so when you think about it, the uniform's always important. When the U.S. Olympic team marches into Pyeongchang on February 9, Friday, wearing Ralph Lauren outfits, a new high twist. to keep the Team USA warm in the frigid weather expected during the Olympics. Ralph Lauren provided the athletes parkas that have wearable heat technology, the IOC said. The parkas, as well as bomber jackets for the closing ceremony, included a streamlined heating piece made of electronic conductive printed inks and fastened to the inside of the jacket in the shape of a silver and carbon American flag. How about that? Ralph Lauren's chief innovation officer told Cheddar the athletes control heating with their phones and that the heating jacket is actually as thick as a thread of hair. Just right across the back of your jacket, no wires. It totally syncs up with the phone and set the temperature. Lauren added, he said the jacket sold out in retail stores within an hour and a half. The heating component can last 11 hours. According to USA Today, it's connected to a 3-mode battery pack in the pocket of the jacket. The battery life will likely last many Olympians through a day's worth of competition. So the overall deal of all of this is the following. You can have Olympics and put them together, and the obvious answer is it is a showcase for technology. It is a showcase for a whole host of issues, and you can't wait for the synergies between television and the Olympics itself. Well, how about one other item that probably isn't going to be getting a lot of press? That's motorsports. It's February, so rev your engines. Arizona Group 1000 won the Avondale, Arizona ISM Raceway is sponsoring Sports Business Arizona, a preview of things to come. It includes Avondale, Arizona's Phoenix International Raceway as the showcase, sponsored by Group 1001 and ISM Raceway. It's 2018 sports business topics in the greater Phoenix area. Development, philanthropy, business relationships as it relates to sports and how it impacts the world. ISM Raceway President Brian Sperber will deliver opening remarks. I'll be honored enough to MC the event. Verizon IndyCar CEO Mark Miles, Andretti Autosport owner Michael Andretti, Group 1001 owner CEO Dan Tauris, Arizona Office of Tourism Economic Director Debbie Johnson, Arizona Coyotes CEO Steve Patterson. The event is related to IndyCar's testing at Phoenix, and it basically kicks off a busy month of racing, open wheel, and Daytona. We have a lot of other issues, soccer, Manchester United's profit statement, the elections for the U.S. Soccer Federation. We'll get into that. We'll also get into the Olympics as it relates to Olympic hockey. We'll have Renee Fassel, who is the head of the International Ice Hockey Federation, to talk about it during the Olympics. But for now, it is an incredible month. Super Bowl, Olympics, NBA All-Star Game, NHL heating up. We'd like to thank Dan Martin for putting this together with Tanner Simpkins. We'd also like to thank Jamie Roots for giving us a lot of his time and generosity. We'd like to thank you for listening and watching as always, and tuning in next week when we go Beyond the Scoreboard.